inspires you, but is there any artists, photographers or sculptors that, you'd say you're really taking a liking to, whether it's a new wave of artist or, a traditional artist? Is there anyone that makes you think, oh, I really like their technique, the way they put, paint to canvas, or how they make use of that object in terms of sculpture?
I think I would still gravitate back to where I get my inspiration from. I mean, mostly because what you find now these days is art is in its many forms a message and a means of expression. I try to express myself through my art and through the art that I see. But what I'm seeing currently is it's quite difficult to actually put a finger on. But then again, you see art and you're immediately inspired by what you see, not necessarily by what name is given to it. It's more about what I really see, what I feel when I see the art, probably for the first time, the second time, or the third time. It's that message within the message that I see in my work. In terms of inspiration, I'm not fully inspired by Western art, to be honest. I acknowledge it. I'm just not inspired by it. I still have that sense within me that shows me that there is more to art than just being where it's from. It's more about, and not just about where it's placed. It's all about the origins. I think I talked earlier about the importance of having, if you have to move a piece of artwork from one location to the other, it's good to know the background, the backstory to it. So, say for example, with Western art, most of the Western art that we find impressive today got their influences from African art. Anyway, using Picasso specifically, he saw an African mask that was brought in by the French, and immediately he started doing that in his work, and he received acclaim. But my question is, where is the acclaim for the person who normally that would be recognized as plagiarism? But yeah, he used that and he propagated himself, and that particular artwork, that sculpture that he got his influences from, has been lost in history and may likely never be recovered, because we've had cases where back in university I had a colleague who discovered during art class that one of the books that was portraying a certain art culture in East Africa actually belonged to West Africa. And when he put it across to the lecturer, it began a really heated debate, and we had to go to the library and eventually found out that he was right. And all three books he used were written by white historians, which displaces an artist, a black artist like myself. If I don't have valid information about where I'm from and where my art comes from, it makes it more difficult for me to express myself, basically. And that's the truth.
Really good answer for that one, yeah. So, yeah.
The video's probably going to rub off negatively on some people.
This is a discussion and this is art, and it's coming from you.
Yeah, it's true.
And that's the thing. I think everybody now is too concerned with, the moral ground of who it's going to offend. But creativity in art is a form of expression. Whether you're telling me through your voice or with paint on a canvas, so it's.
Yeah, I think what's more wrong is the fact that, and this is really crazy. For me, stifling creativity is a sin compared to speaking out about it. And I think as with all this issue around racism and prejudices going around. Artists don't necessarily speak up about it enough. I mean, they can portray it in their work, but the spoken word is quite weighted in matters like this, where people need to start discussing more about the systemic issues that stifles artists, and have always been stifling artists. I know for a fact that I have a lot of black artists like myself in the UK who can't exhibit in certain places, can't sell work in certain places. Their works are viewed with biases, which shouldn't be so. I believe that every artist should be looked at based on what they produce, not where they're from or what color skin they are. I know this conversation is always swinging back into racial issues, but I think it's a whole part of the discussion about my art personally, and I'm sure a lot of black artists would share this as well.
Yeah. The world as we know it has changed due to the pandemic.
True.
Obviously, we've had the furlough scheme. Businesses have been getting grants. But what's come up in the press lately, it's something that's always been there. The underfunding of the arts. But with the lack of support for the arts during the pandemic, and what also appears to be moving forward, imagery of telling people to retrain for another career or another job, putting it across that the arts isn't a sustainable industry. Well, how important do you think the art and creative industry is, not just as a sector for employment, but also opening people's minds and imaginations, not just for the younger generation, but for people that want to escape? They can find escapism from the day-to-day stresses.
I mean, I think watching the news and seeing what the government is intending to do with the artists, not just visual artists, but artists in general, just proves that the government is still not aware how important the arts are and how they should be supported fundamentally. And I think this is something that I've always experienced as an artist. I've gone to, this is me coming from a background where my dad believed that being an artist means you're never going to be successful. He wanted me to be an architect or an accountant, and it took me having to paint a portrait of him to convince him that I've got the talent and I'm quite capable of handling myself in an art course in university or wherever, standing my ground. But then I've got those issues with my kids going to school, and you're getting even teachers in school not supporting the arts and thinking it's more important to get math and get English. And the pandemic has even exposed it more, that we need the arts. People are missing theatres, going to the cinemas, going to ballets, going to exhibitions. Performing arts is suffering, and people feel that. It's not just about watching TV, it's not just about trying to play up something at home or looking at social media. There is a sense of joy you get, an elation you get from going and attending events, art events. The art encompasses events. It's also about what's being produced. Everything you see around you is art, or is influenced by art. And if the government fails to really recognize that, then it's really, really tough. It's tough on people, it's tough on the artists themselves, and I think something needs to be done. Not just by hearsay, and it's more about action. And the only way it can be done is to involve the artists themselves. I think the fundamental problem is that the government is trying to help artists without involving the artists and consulting with them. And that's the reason why you got funding, but the funding is not going to the right place, or is not being properly catered, so it will be there for the artist to use. So you might have a funding pot that doesn't have a specific purpose for an artist to utilize for themselves and for the general public. So I don't see an end to it unless there's a dialogue between artists, the government bodies, and the administrators and the charities and all the organizations in the arts to get involved. I also think the local museums in every borough in the UK, in every council, should pay more attention to the local artists and draw them into the conversation about how they can help the arts during a time like this and post-pandemic as well. So looking forward, things should change. The only way it can be positively changed is to involve more of the artists and get their voices and not just get the opinion of the general public, but specific artists. If you're into drama, if you're into plays, ballet, painting, whatever your field is, art related, the government should be speaking with us. That's what I think.
Totally agree with you on that.